news, America. The Fed has opened the repo factory. The repurchase agreement factory has been opened up. It's open for business since March 31st, 2020. So it's been open for business for about 12 days now, since it's 10:26 a.m. Sunday, April 12th, 2020. So 12 days, right? We got a brand new repo. America, isn't this fantastic? In fact, this isn't fantastic. This is terrible. 84% of the stocks are owned by the top wealthiest 10% in the U.S., and also 1% own two-thirds of all the stocks. 1% own two-thirds, and the top wealthiest 10% own 84%. So who owns all the stocks? The 1%, the wealthiest 10%, the richest, not the average ordinary American, not the average ordinary American worker. So the U.S. dollar index actually was up 0.15% on a daily basis at 100.12, but the Aussie dollar and the Kiwi dollar is down. So the Fed, they authorized, it's authorized by the Federal Open Market Committee, which is the granddaddy of the Fed. The Fed is the big daddy of all the banks, but the FOMC, the FOMC, the Federal Open Markets Committee, is the granddaddy of all the banks. So with permission from granddaddy, we got a repo facility, and they're going to start, providing dollars, right, for federal banks, the Fed's banks, and for the, foreign, so purchase agreement. It's not repo. When you say repo, it's a repurchase agreement, not repo like repossess, but it is kind of repossess, because a repurchase agreement, it seems like it's a loan, but there's actually an asset that's passed as collateral, and then the Fed, so the Fed, let's just say for foreign banks, so for the Deutsche Bank, right, the German bank, the Fed is going to go ahead and sell these repurchase agreements and give them some assets, give them assets as collateral, and then later on, they're going to buy the asset back at a premium price. And so therefore, the Fed is making some money. But the whole idea about, getting this facility, this factory, so we got a commercial paper factory, we got a repo factory. So the point, this is supposed to be a temporary repurchase agreement facility. It's for foreign central banks, mainly for foreign central banks to enjoy the nice, smooth, functioning support of U.S. financial markets. Got to make sure Deutsche Bank and the Bank of England and the European Central Bank, got to make sure all these banks have, plenty of liquidity. What about the American worker? We should get UBI, $2,000 UBI, just like Canada, every month until this crisis is over. That guarantees our economy, our personal economies, and the economy at large will be okay. So the program by the Fed, the repo factory, it allows for domestic and foreign banks to exchange U.S. treasuries for dollars. So they get some dollar bills. Yep, dollar bills, y'all. So the foreign banks are going to get our dollar bills. Temporarily, they're telling us. But just so that foreign central banks have plenty of U.S. dollars in their reserves, okay? They got plenty of American dollars. We printed up a bunch of them, so they're fine, right? Fantastic. Make sure the foreign banks have liquidity. So I think it's very, telling. I would like to know, what is the asset the Fed's actually selling? Because while it's considered a loan, there is collateral. There is an asset that's sold until the seller repurchases the repurchase agreement at a premium. So I wonder what assets the Fed is actually selling. The Fed wrote, this facility, this repurchase agreement facility, should help support the smooth functioning of the U.S. Treasury market by providing an alternative temporary source to U.S. dollars other than the sales of securities in the open market. So what the fuck? What happened to the invisible hand of the magical free market? No more, I guess Milton Friedman and Adam Smith is dead. We're all Keynesians now. At least the 1%, the 84%, the wealthiest 10%, and the 1%, the rich people who own stocks, upper middle class, I guess they'll probably buy it. They'll dabble. They'll buy, McDonald's stock for So the U.S. stock futures stayed down in spite of the Fed's announcement of the repo facility. So the stock futures are saying, no, we're going through a Great Depression. We're going to crash. So what the Fed is sitting there saying, why does this help? Okay, what's their argument? Their argument is that we're trying to bolster broader market confidence. So, our banks could collapse, but the 2008 Great Recession almost made the entire world's banks collapse. So they're trying to, be good stewards, be good neighbors to these. But they're all a bunch of, investment bankers, rich motherfuckers anyway, so they probably don't even have national loyalty to begin with. They just have loyalty to their pocketbooks and each other. But the whole idea is by putting the U.S. dollar in local markets in, Germany and the Bank of England and in Europe and what other, I guess, China and Hong Kong, whatever foreign markets are out there, the term of the repo is usually just overnight. So the repurchase agreement is just for one day. It can be rolled over as needed. So, okay, look, I'll give you one day and then just keep rolling over until eventually they can pay it off. Transactions conducted at a rate of 25 basis points over the interest rate on excess reserves. Outstanding transaction totals will be made public in the Federal Reserve's weekly balance sheet report. The repurchase agreement. This is a key tool for, hedge fund managers. Hedge fund managers, they hedge their bets. They find some 5% and they get 0.5% of the 5% and then they make a shit ton of money. So repurchase agreement is what these hedge fund managers and banks, they use short-term borrowing for dealers in government securities. In the case of a repurchase agreement, a dealer sells government securities to investors, usually on an overnight basis, and buys them back the following day at a slightly higher price. These short-term agreements provide temporary lending opportunities that help to fund ongoing operations. The Federal Reserve uses repos and reverse repos as a method to control the money supply. And a reverse repo is, basically the same transaction. The repo is the first agreement. The reverse repo is when you buy the repo back. So a repo is the agreement between parties where the buyer temporarily agrees to purchase a basket or a group of securities for a specified period. The buyer agrees to sell those same assets back to the original owner at a slightly higher price using a reverse repo agreement. So it refers to the same transaction depending on which side of the transaction that you're on. So fantastic, right, America? Now we got a commercial paper factory. We got a repurchase agreement factory. We don't have any NHL, right? NBA and baseball, no basketball, no hockey. Movies are closed, no theaters, so Hollywood is shut down. We're learning that YouTubers are actually better at running a show than late-night hosts are. So everybody's staying in their homes, right? They're quarantining. We're putting face masks on, and basically changing our entire society. We're taking a breath, right? And we're saying, okay, is this what we're trying to do? Is this what? But idle hands is the devil's workshop. So Donald's trying to get the economy back on track as soon as possible, right? So when it comes to the average American people, this doesn't even affect the average American person. But for the hedge fund managers, billionaire class, for the government, the Leviathan plutocracy, for the Leviathan plutocracy, this repurchase agreement, this repurchase factory is good for them. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Isn't that logical, to match people's needs up to the resources that's out there? Why would we just let people die off just because we want to, the name of free market capitalism, which our own government, the capitalist and the U.S. government don't even believe in? They don't even believe in capitalism. Yeah, Pelosi, you're a real capitalist. Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, you guys are such great capitalists for yourselves, but you're not letting banks fail. So banks should fail. Banks should fail. If they start, failing in succession, that's when you get nervous. But one big-ass bank, two big-ass banks, if they didn't organize their shit right, if they had a crappy company with crappy decisions made by the board of governors and the president, they deserve to fail, do they not? Hedge fund managers, so they don't have, Some are at the Hamptons, just like that Shamash, that one guy, that one billionaire said. So, yeah, hedge fund managers, they're not going to be able to skim the top off of billionaires' agreements and, make enough money for an extra Corvette now. The big fucking deal. We got to hurry up and save these assholes. That's why we're building all these factories, these commercial paper factories, which commercial paper I don't think is worth a Continental. But then the repurchase agreements are selling assets. What assets? With the securities, a basket of securities and some assets. Supposed to be for one day, but we're just supposed to, trust all these bastards? Just trust all these bastards, trading and transaction. They're printing up the U.S. dollar for foreign banks. That's what the whole point of the repurchase agreement factory is. Does that make you feel confident? I mean, did they build a factory to make sure that there's more U.S. dollars in Americans' pockets? I mean, we get $1,200, but Canada's getting $2,000 every month, just like Bernie Sanders had suggested. So fascinating how Bernie Sanders is the man we need in, time of crisis, and yet that's not the person the Democratic voters had chose. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. John Masters, Southern Colorado, USA, the Earth, solar system, Milky Way, galaxy, universe. Peace.